Today we're going to work through some more percent problems with sales, discounts, tax, and tip so we can really become fluent in these types of problems and feel comfortable solving any of them. So real quick, we're going to review anytime we have percent problems with sales and tax. We first need to find the discount. We then subtract the discount from the total. Because a discount is money we don't have to pay, we get to take it off. Then we probably have tax. We need to find the tax on the sale price. So whatever our sale price is from step 2, we compute our tax on that. And then finally, we add the tax to the total because it's extra money we have to spend. All right, so let's take a look at this first problem. Julia bought a pair of Converse shoes that were originally $45.99, but were 15% off. If the tax rate is 7%, what is her total? So the first percent I see is 15% off. Since it's off, I know I'm going to have to subtract. Then I also see tax is 7%, and I know tax means I'm going to have to add. So I have 2%. That means I'm going to have 2 proportions. I see that I need to be subtracting something and then adding something. So this is a 4-step problem. First, we're going to find our discount. Go ahead now and find the discount using a proportion on your own. All right, go ahead and check your work. Your proportion should have been 15 over 100 equals X over $45.99. And you should get a discount of $6.90. Next, we need to find the sale price. Go ahead and find the sale price by subtracting. So you should have subtracted $45.99 minus the discount, and your sale price should be $39.09. Next step is we need to find our tax. Go ahead, set up a proportion, and solve for the tax. All right, so your proportion should have been 7 over 100 equals X over 39.09. We use the sale price. And for X, you should have gotten $2.74 for the tax. Finally, once we have the tax, we need to add it. So go ahead and find the final total. All right, so you should have added the $2.74 to your sale price to get a total of $41.83. So now we have a problem with tax and tip. So this is when you go out to eat, we pay tax on our food, and then we leave a tip for the waiter or waitress. So our first thing we're going to need to do is we find the tax on the subtotal. Then, as always, we add the tax to the subtotal. It's extra money you have to pay. Once we have our total, now we can leave a tip. So we use the percentage to find the tip, and then we add it again to the total because it's more money we're paying. So when we go out to eat and we only have tax and tip, nothing is being subtracted because it's all more money we have to pay. So let's take a look at this problem. It says the subtotal brunch bill came to $22.35. The tax rate was 8%, and 18% tip was left. How much was the final total? So we're going to use these bullet points too to help us determine our first and second steps. So my first step needs to be this tax rate. So go ahead now, use the proportion, and solve for the tax. All right, so your proportion that you set up should have been 8 over 100 for the tax equals X over 22.35. And you should have gotten $1.79 for the tax. Second step again is always we need to add the tax. So go ahead right now, add the tax to the subtotal. Alright, so you should have done $22.35 plus $179 and gotten a total of $24.14. That's how much the bill is, but again, our next step is we need to leave a tip. Use a proportion to calculate the tip. So your proportion should have been our percent over 100, X over our total bill, and you should have gotten $4.35 for the tip. And our very last step, we're going to find the final total by adding the tip onto the bill. So we will do $24.14 plus our tip and get a final total of $28.49 that was spent at the brunch. Again, tax and tip, we're adding both times. So now it's time to practice. Go ahead right now and solve the first problem completely on your own. You should have 4 steps. Put in your answer when you're done. Alright, so let's first go ahead. Alright, so my first step is going to be to solve for my tax. We should have 7.5 over 100 equals X over my bill. And when I solve, I get X equals $4.21 for my tax. My second step needs to be to add. So you should get $60.36 for your total. My next step is to find out how much the tip would be. Using the proportion, we should get X equals $9.05 that would be the tip. And then we're going to add our total bill plus the tip. And we get a final total of $69.41. Alright, solve this second one on your own and pay careful attention to what each of the percents represent. Alright, so my first step for this problem is to calculate the discount. So I'm going to do 30 over 100 equals X over 35, and I get X equals $10.50 for my discount. A discount, it says 30% off, so I'm going to take my original price, $35, and take off or subtract my $10.50, and when I do that, I get $24.50. This is my sale price. This is how much I now have to spend for that shirt. My next step now is to figure out the tax. So we should have 6 over 100 equals X over $24.50. Always tax your sale price. And when we solve for X, we should get X equals $1.47. And again, that is the tax. So once I have the tax, I need to add it. And we should get $25.97. All right, we're going to continue our practice with this problem. Go ahead and solve on your own. All right, hopefully you picked up on the fact that we have an extra step in this problem. It says Ted bought a fishing pole for $35.99 and the bait. So in order to first, before we even figure out the coupon or the tax, I need to figure out his total. So I need to add up what he's buying to get how much his whole subtotal is. So he is spending a total of $48.98 before sales and tax. Anytime you have multiple items, you must first add them up to get the subtotal. So now the first step would be he has a coupon. So again, it's 35% off, which means I'm going to subtract. A coupon is just like a discount. It's money we don't have to spend. So this should have been your proportion. And when you solve for x, you should have gotten $17.14 as the discount, how much he gets to take off. Which means our second step will be to subtract. And so the sale price of the items is $31.84. Next is our tax of 8%. He's only really paying $31.84. So we get x equals $2.55. We need to pay attention to our rounding, and so that 54 would bump up to a 55. And lastly, our tax, we are going to add it on. So his final total would be $34.39. This is our last problem for the day. Read number 4, solve, and then enter your answer. All right, so we are going out to eat. We have tax and tip, which means my tax needs to come first. So I'm going to do 6 over 100 equals x over my total of $61.42. I solve for x, and we should get $3.69. So in your calculator, it was 3.685. Remember, I only want 2 digits after the decimal. This 5 will make this 8 bump up to a 9. Second step now, since this is tax, I'm going to add it to my subtotal. So the total with tax is going to be $65.11. Now, we need to calculate the tip. 16% tip was left, and we tip based on the amount we just found. So the tip is going to be $10 and 42 cents because of rounding. Tip is more money that we're paying, so we're going to take $65.11, add it to the $10.42, and we will get $75.53. If you stopped here, this is great work, and if you got this correct. However, we didn't answer the question. I'm going to go back and look. If it says, if they split the bill evenly, how much did each person pay? This right here is the total bill for everything. But they are splitting it. Splitting is a big key word, and splitting it means to divide. So they're taking this total bill and they're dividing it among each other so that each person is paying the same amount. So my fifth and final step is to take $75.53 and divide it by, let's take a look. Mario went with his 3 friends. So that means we need to divide by 4. Himself plus the 3 friends. And when we do, we get $18.88 each one of those people would have to pay. Again, so important that we read the question and determine whether or not our answer has answered the question.